Welcome to the Trees and Lines podcast, where we discuss fresh perspectives on utility vegetation management. Don't forget to follow along on LinkedIn for the latest news. Now, let's dive into this week's episode. Welcome to another episode of the Trees and Lines podcast, and we're here at the Trees and Utilities 2025 conference. And last year, we enjoyed a conversation with Sven. Help me out here, Sven.
Sven Przywarra.
Yeah, you got that. And CEO of LiveEO. And we had such a good conversation last year. We thought we'd have you back, get an update.
Yeah, happy to
learn a
hear
little bit
that.
more about your company and what you're doing these days.
Thanks for having me. Excited for the conversation.
Like I said, last year you gave us a little introduction to your company, but that was last year. So
Yeah.
would you do that again? Tell us a little bit
100%.
about yourself and about the company.
Yeah, so happy to be here again. So yeah, as you already mentioned, I'm Sven, co-founder and co-CEO of LiveEO. LiveEO is a leading satellite data analytics company. We help utilities to make sense of their networks by telling them precisely where trees are coming too close to the overhead lines, grow-ins, fall-ins, and we provide them also with the tools and the integrations to make sense of that. So we are right now around 160 people. We have customers from the west coast of the US to the east coast of the US, from India to Germany. So we have utility customers on every continent of the globe, among others American Electric Power, the biggest Indian grid operator. And yeah, I started the company after studying business engineering in Berlin.
You're an engineer. Your partner's an engineer, if I recall.
That's correct, yeah.
So do you have veg managers on your team?
So we have vegetation management experts, people which used to work at utilities in our team. We also have people which have been working for decades in the utility vegetation management industry, from working previously at LiDAR companies. Obviously, that is an important tool in the toolbox right now, to companies, to people which worked at consultancies in that space. So we have a lot of expertise, and where we really, like, the reason why we started the company in the first place was my co-founder and myself. We came from that space background, and we saw the big opportunities which come with satellite data. And we said, infrastructure grid operators might have a need for that, and it was the case. And then, yeah, as you said, we brought in a lot of domain expertise in.
Yeah, good. So give us an idea of your footprint, or you mentioned where all you're working. So how much is US based versus?
So out of our utility business, and we also sell to pipeline operators with a different product, I would say roughly 50% is out of the US and Canada, and 50% is of the rest of the world. So we started in Germany. We won the biggest infrastructure grid operator in Europe as our first customer in 2018. And in 2019, we made the step over, and we presented at CEATI conference back then. It was very exciting. No one was talking about satellite data. And now, 6 years later, you can really say that the industry has gone through a transformation. And so now we have, for example, municipalities in Ohio. We have infrastructure grid operators in California. We have American Electric Power over 11 states as our customer on the transmission side. But apart from that, obviously in our EMEA APAC business, we have customers from India to Japan, to Australia, to New Zealand, to Spain, to Germany, to Denmark. So really all over the place.
What's the differences? Are the utilities essentially the same?
Well, utilities have some things in common and some things which are different across the globe. Obviously, I think one thing which you can really say is the US American utility market is the most advanced globally. Just I think by the network effects the big market has, and like conferences like this, and the sophistication is quite high, obviously in the States, and highest globally. But that doesn't mean that other utilities in other parts of the globe are also very advanced, but it's more a regional market by market thing, right? So you really need to look at the German market and the Spanish market rather than looking at the European or rest of the world market. So it's, but what one can say is that it's always depending on whether the utility wants to change the way how they've been doing things. And there you obviously have always like leaders, like for example the German railway operator, or E.ON. We monitor the entire distribution network in Germany. And you have companies which say, well, we wait things out. But no market in its entirety is as advanced as the States.
And even within the states too, like if you look at it from a regional perspective, those markets
Yeah.
are different, right?
Sure.
Even state to state, operator to operator.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that's indicative of a snapshot to the entire global economy in this space.
100%, and you've mentioned it, right? I think it's always these local network effects. You have one big IOU, and then the munis around or the corps around also adopt the technology. And you have that also in Europe, but because language plays a bigger role there, right?
Yeah.
It's then only the companies within this country which are adopting it. So that's why you need to capture each market individually.
Yeah. Now, culturally too, when you guys are engaging with the potential clients or current clients, et cetera, being that you are a global organization, how do you integrate that, to your point, translation across the different platforms, the different services, and then obviously the different clientele and cultural differences thereof?
So I think like the good thing is that the product in itself doesn't really need to change, right? What all utilities across the globe want to know is where's that tree which will fall into my overhead line, right? And then also the way how utilities work is very similar. Sometimes utilities have the tree trimming crews in-house, but most of the times, like in the States, it's outsourced. So we've all baked that into our tool. And then we've built our tools, our applications in such a way that on the one hand side, we can really easily adopt them to new languages. So we have it in Spanish, Italian, German, English, obviously. And it's easily adaptable into other languages. But on the other side, it's also you can slightly change the procedures, and it's a very modular like tool set, very modular tool with which you can adopt to your processes. So you can then adopt to the regional processes. I think the biggest difference is really in the sales process, right, and how you sell it to utilities. Because what I love about the US and Canada is that people here look more than in Europe at the return on investment and not the price.
Yes.
Because ultimately this is what is this about, right? It doesn't matter whether it costs like $100 or $1,000. If it gives you $10,000, you should do it either way. Yeah. And in Europe, it's oftentimes like, can I get it for free? And if you can't get it for free, then I don't want to have it. And then it takes years before like they make up their mind and realize, okay, the ROI is there. And that's obviously what we've learned and are now need to push much more onto the customer in Europe than in the US, where it's much more natively.
Yeah, just the business model.
Is
it going
much
to
more
work?
business savvy.
No, that totally makes sense.
So you can't turn on news without some article about AI changing the world. How's it changing your world?
So obviously, I mean, we've been an AI native company since the inception. So we couldn't analyze satellite data without AI. And I think this is also we're not the only satellite-based vegetation management solution in the market. And I think where we stand out and where we differentiate is as well from the quality of the AI analytics. This is really where we've invested like tens of millions of euros and dollars to build out that technology piece. And so we've been AI native from the beginning, but recent developments in AI have really accelerated our developments on three fronts. First, the way how we develop, right? So we obviously a big user of AI to improve the way how we develop stuff and how run our processes in-house. But the second thing is we've been adopting a lot of the newest AI model breakthroughs in our own systems architecture. And last but not least, our customers can make use of our tools better by us having implemented AI agentic capabilities in it, right? So starting with native translation to the way how you interface with the tools. So it doesn't matter whether you are you don't need to click a button anymore to get an answer to a question, right? This is where we currently are at.
Yeah. There's been a lot of buzz about AI within the last few years, and we had an earlier conversation that talked about exactly that, as how fast that is advancing everything. It doesn't matter what it is within the utility business. And I always ask the question, like, where do you think that we're going to be at in 5 years with what AI and the integration thereof with your software systems and hardware systems at LiveEO? What's the future hold?
So I think for sure in 5 years our analytics will be even better. So right now we've benchmarked it against all our competitors or our customers have, and also against LiDAR. And we're now really, really close to the accuracy levels of LiDAR with our satellite analytics. And so I think that in a couple of years we will be at the accuracy levels, or maybe not exactly because LiDAR is an incredible technology, but even closer. So that's number one. Number two is we will be able to tell even more things about the vegetation, not only whether it's healthy or not, how high it is, where it is, species, but down to subspecies, and also I think that one can tell also much more about like the surrounding, the ground and whatnot, and fuse this all into a risk model. So that's the second thing. And last but not least, I think really like, and this is what I'm personally most very much interested about is how will people change their user behavior when it comes to applications? Because right now I think there's a lot of buzz and a lot of hype around, okay, everyone will just interface with all tools through kind of like language. But will that happen in 5 years? Will it happen in 2 years? Will it happen in 10 years? We don't know. But I think that the kind of way how we interact with applications and tools and data will fundamentally change in a dramatic way. And I don't have an answer how that will then affect us, in what way it will affect us, but it will for sure affect LiveEO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find it fascinating. I was another discussion I would like to pick your brain on in terms, it was kind of shifting gears a little bit to tree risk.
Yeah.
Obviously, one of the pieces of your puzzle that you guys are solving for a lot of utilities is tree risk and understanding tree risk. And since you have a global purview on how that is interpreted to some degree, what details or what aha moments are just kind of the basics of people really been focusing on tree risk? It's health, height, etc., species. Is there anything else in that portfolio that you guys have differentiated and identified as a key factor?
So no, I think it's always these factors, right? And then it's like, okay, what's the risk appetite of the utility to act then on these factors? A fun story is we had a customer in Southeast Asia who which biggest problem was bamboo growing underneath the overhead lines because it was growing so dramatically quickly. And they were sending out crews like every other week or so to trim it back down. And they were trying to figure out a better tool to monitor that. Now, satellite data has a lot of opportunities, but with that specific use case, it's slightly difficult because you can't capture in Southeast Asia that quickly to solve that specific problem around species. So, yeah, long story short.
It grows vertical and it's like that big.
Yeah, exactly.
Seeing it from space and measuring the growth habits, I can see that being a challenge.
Yeah. But the vertical accuracy of us, that's really where we stand out. So we can measure tree height with resolution up to 1 feet, but typically 2 feet accuracy in the vertical axis. And that's also where we differentiate from our competitors. This is because we believe that this is the most important thing. You don't only want to know where a tree is, but more importantly, is it as high as it, or is it too high and do we need to trim it? And this is where we are really strong.
Yeah. And obviously height compounds failure probability.
100%.
Right? Gravity is always a constant.
Yep.
And it's a key factor that, take into consideration from a risk perspective.
Yeah.
So are most of your clients using it on transmission, distribution, or what's that mix look like?
So I think, so we have customers which use it on transmission. We have customers which use it on distribution. So it's very useful for both. Most customers start on transmission, but if you're a Muni, you can use it as well. And you previously don't have an understanding of actually alongside your entire network where you need to start. Satellite data is a perfect tool for that as well. So you can use it for both. And you can also use it as a railway operator. Just realize that in the US, that's not such a big market because we've heard from a railway operator, well, in Europe, there's so many passenger carrying trains and they need to be on time and whatnot. Like most of our trains are here, obviously, cargo. And if there's a branch on the tracks, we just go right through it.
Yeah, run it over.
Yeah,
very much so.
So what about pipeline? Do you have many pipeline customers?
We have pipeline customers, and but this is a different product. So we have our vegetation management product, which is mainly used by electrical utilities globally. And then we have a product which is targeted at pipeline operators to identify third-party interferences within the right-of-way. And that's being used by big pipeline operators here in the States, but also, again, in Europe, in the Middle East, in Nigeria, right? Everywhere where you have pipelines, because oil is expensive anywhere across the globe. Yeah.
So if I'm trying to remember our conversation last year, and I think you said that you don't have clients, you have partners. And so tell us about that relationship with your partners. How do you make that happen?
Yeah.
And what's that mean?
So I think it's really, really important, especially in a small and tightly knitted industry like the utility industry, that you treat your customers as partners. You don't want to just sell something to a customer and then leave, or try to overhype a technology and then underwhelm with your deliveries, right? I think this is really, really important. And this is why we look at our customers more from a partnership side of thing, because we believe that you need to start with first promising what the technology can actually do, and then jointly figure out where that would create the ROI, which I talked about earlier, and then developing how you can scale it. And this is only goes if you have a bilateral conversation, really figure things out, because every utility is different, every utility is special, and then you need to also work very closely with the customer to enable oftentimes their subcontractors, right? So, and this is kind of like, and then it's not we don't say to the customer, you do that, but we jointly work on enabling their subcontractors to make full use of the technology.
I kind of want to shift gears a little bit. We were talking about markets, and obviously U.S. is a big chunk of your market. The rest of the world is the other part. Outside of the U.S., where have you seen like the most prominent emerging markets? I recently read an article that parts of Africa have really beefed up grid expansion, and obviously satellite utilization would be critical to help build those out. So like, where are you seeing like the emerging markets kind of exploring those?
So the thing is with emerging markets, satellite data in itself is still in relatively, like it is an comparatively cheap, but in absolute numbers, an expensive solution for developing markets oftentimes, especially if labor is so incredibly cheap. I was in a country in Southeast Asia earlier this year, and it took I think 1 hour Uber drive and cost me $4, right? So then if labor is that cheap, then why use any other thing than a human who can take directly in action? So it really is then about figuring out in these developing markets, where's the pain, not the price of human labor, but rather a different thing, like the overview, or maybe different kind of like, let's say, political thing, or oversight just over what your subcontractors are doing. And that requires a different sales motion than in the States, right? Where you know that the customer has been at conferences like Trees and Utilities for years and has heard about the technology, has listened to your podcast, and just knows what you're talking about and knows the value proposition. There, you have to figure out where's the fit between the technology and the pain.
Very good. Sven, I appreciate your taking time. You know, it really an interesting conversation. I think we could go on. I know Brian has a million questions.
I have a million questions.
But I know you have another commitment as well.
I'll just come find you in Berlin.
I just want to thank you. I know it's a busy time for you, and you got a booth too. And thank you for taking time, coming by.
Appreciate it.
And things are changing so fast. We'll see you again next year.
I hope to be on the show next year as well. Yeah,
okay.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Thanks for joining us today. Follow us on LinkedIn for updates and to tune in again to the Trees and Lines podcast.